The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council had not seen a full gathering in 3,000 years. The last time all 12 species had come together was to decide the fate of the Morven people, a race that had dared to challenge the old order. The Morven were now extinct. Their homeworld was a dead rock floating in empty space, a warning to all who might think of rebellion. Now the chamber was full again. The massive room stretched upward into darkness, its walls made of black stone that seemed to swallow light. Floating platforms held the representatives of each species, arranged in a circle around a single spot in the center. That spot was where the accused would stand. That spot was where judgment would fall. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in that spot alone. She was a small woman by human standards, with dark hair pulled back tight and eyes that had seen too much for her 40 years of life. She wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. No medals or decorations. Around her neck hung a single pendant, a gift from her grandmother who had survived the dark years when humanity almost destroyed itself. Elena looked up at the beings who would decide her species' fate. She had studied them all, memorized their histories, learned their weaknesses. But seeing them in person was different. Seeing them made her understand just how small humanity really was. The Vethkai sat on the platform to her left. They were insects, but not like any insect from Earth. Each one stood 3 meters tall, with 4 arms ending in sharp claws and heads covered in dozens of small eyes. Their bodies were covered in hard shells of deep red, and when they moved, the sound of their clicking filled the chamber like 1,000 bones breaking at once. The Vethkai had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 50,000 years. They kept slaves from a dozen worlds. They considered other species to be nothing more than tools to be used and thrown away. Across from them floated the Illumin. They had no solid bodies at all. They were clouds of glowing gas, shifting between colors that humans had no names for. They communicated through pulses of light, and their thoughts moved faster than any organic brain could follow. The Illumin controlled the galaxy's banking systems. They decided which species would prosper and which would starve. They had never fired a weapon in their entire history. They had never needed to. The serene coiled in their gravity cradles above Elena's head. They looked like snakes made of silver metal, but they were alive, their scales reflecting the dim light of the chamber. The Sirene were the oldest species in the known galaxy. They had been traveling between stars when humanity's ancestors were still living in caves. They spoke rarely, but when they did, others listened. Their silence was often more terrifying than their words. The Kreth Dominion's representative sat on a throne of black iron. The Kreth were warriors, their bodies built for combat. They stood on 2 thick legs, their torsos covered in natural armor plates. Their faces had no expression that humans could read, just 2 burning yellow eyes above a mouth full of teeth designed for tearing flesh. The Kreth had conquered 60 worlds. They had never lost a war, until 3 months ago, when a small human fleet had somehow survived their attack and driven them back. That was why Elena was here. That was why the Council had gathered for the first time in 3,000 years. High Arbiter Tholux rose from his platform. He was a being made of living crystal, his body catching the light and throwing rainbows across the dark walls. When he spoke, his voice was like glass breaking, sharp and cold and impossible to ignore. "This council is now in session," Tholux announced. "We are here to judge the species known as humanity. We are here to decide if they will be allowed to continue as a free people, or if they will face the consequences of their actions." Elena said nothing. She had been told not to speak until spoken to directly. She had been told to show respect, to bow her head, to remember that humanity was young and weak and dependent on the goodwill of these ancient powers. She kept her head high. Tholux continued, his crystal body pulsing with each word. "The charges against humanity are as follows. First, they have violated the Treaty of Closed Borders by establishing colonies in the disputed reach, territory that belongs to no single species, and is therefore under council control." The Vethkai clicked their approval. The disputed reach was close to their space. They had wanted those worlds for themselves. Second, Tholux said, humanity has violated the Kreth Dominion's sovereign rights by sheltering refugees from Kreth territory. These refugees are property under Kreth law. Humanity has refused to return them. Elena felt her jaw tighten. Property. The Kreth called living, thinking beings property, and the Council accepted it. The Council had always accepted it. Third, Humanity has engaged in unauthorized military action against the Kreeth Dominion, resulting in the destruction of 7 Kreeth warships and the deaths of over 2,000 Kreeth soldiers. Now the chamber filled with noise. The Kreeth representative slammed his fist against his throne, roaring something in his own language. The Vethkai clicked faster, their many eyes fixed on Elena with hunger. Even the Illumin pulsed brighter, their colors shifting toward angry red. Tholux raised a crystalline hand, and silence fell. Humanity has been a spacefaring species for 60 of their years, Tholux said. In that time, they have repeatedly ignored the laws that have kept peace in this galaxy for 10,000 years. They have acted without permission. They have expanded without approval. They have fought without authorization. He turned to face Elena directly, and she felt the weight of his attention like a physical force. Ambassador Vasquez, you represent your species before this council. You have heard the charges against humanity. The council demands an explanation. The council demands that humanity justify its continued existence as a sovereign species. The chamber fell silent. Every eye, every sensor, every form of attention was focused on the small human woman standing alone in the center of the room. Elena thought about what her advisors had told her to say. She was supposed to apologize. She was supposed to promise that humanity would follow the rules from now on. She was supposed to beg for mercy and hope that the council would be gentle. But Elena had read the histories. She knew what happened to species that begged. The Morvan had begged. They had apologized and promised and pleaded. And then they had been wiped from existence anyway, because the council did not respect weakness. The council only respected power. Humanity did not have power. Not yet. They were too young, too small, too new to the stars. But they had something else. They had something that had carried them through ice ages and plagues and wars and the near destruction of their own world. They had the refusal to give up. High Arbiter, Elena said, her voice steady and clear in the vast chamber. I request a recess of 6 hours before making humanity's response. I must consult with my government. Tholux's crystal form flickered with what might have been surprise. Species usually responded immediately, either with submission or with desperate defiance. A request for time was unusual. The council will grant a recess of 3 hours, Tholux said. Use them wisely, Ambassador. When you return, humanity's fate will be decided. Elena bowed her head slightly, the only sign of respect she would give. Then she turned and walked out of the chamber, feeling the eyes of 12 ancient species following her every step. She had 3 hours to decide how her species would face its judgment. 3 hours to choose between surrender and something far more dangerous. Elena Vasquez walked toward her ship, and she did not look back. The human ship was called Defiant Hope. It was a small vessel compared to the massive warships of the Kreeth or the elegant cruisers of the Illumin. But it was fast, and it was tough, and it had carried Elena across half the galaxy to reach this moment. She walked through the narrow corridors, past crew members who looked at her with worried eyes. They all knew what was happening in the council chamber. They all knew that humanity's future hung by a thread. Some of them had families back on Earth. Some had children on the colony worlds. All of them were waiting for Elena to tell them what would happen next. She could not tell them. Not yet. Not until she was sure. Her quarters were small. Just a bed and a desk and a screen that connected her to Earth. She locked the door behind her and sat down heavily in her chair. For a moment, she let herself feel the weight of everything pressing down on her shoulders. For a moment, she let herself be afraid. Then she pushed the fear aside and got to work. The screen lit up with a secure connection to Earth's government. The face that appeared was President Chen, an old man with tired eyes who had spent his whole life preparing for this moment. Behind him, Elena could see the shadows of generals and advisors, all watching, all waiting. Ambassador Vasquez, President Chen said, we have been monitoring the proceedings. The situation is worse than we expected. The charges are designed to be impossible to answer, Elena replied. If we apologize, we admit guilt. If we defend ourselves, we show defiance. Either way, they have an excuse to act against us. Our analysts agree. The council does not want justice. They want submission. President Chen leaned forward, his eyes sharp despite his age. The question is, what do we do about it? Elena had thought about this question for weeks. She had thought about it during the long journey to Nexus Prime, during the sleepless nights in her quarters, during every moment when she was alone with her thoughts. and she had come to an answer that frightened her. "We cannot submit," she said. "If we bow now, we will never stand again. They will take our colonies. They will take our refugees. They will take everything that makes us who we are. And then, when we have nothing left, they will take us. The military option is not viable," one of the generals said from behind President Chen. "We have 73 warships. The Kreth alone have over 2,000. The combined fleets of the Council could destroy every human world in a matter of weeks." "I am not talking about war," Elena said. "I am talking about something else. Something we have been preparing for since we first reached the stars." She opened a file on her desk, one that was marked with the highest security clearance humanity had ever created. The file was called Project Looking Glass, and it contained 60 years of secrets. When humanity had first made contact with alien life, they had been filled with hope. They had imagined a galaxy of friends, of partners, of beings who would welcome them into a community of peace. They had been wrong. The first species they met had tried to enslave them. The second had tried to steal their technology. The third had simply ignored them, treating humanity like insects not worth the effort of killing. And the Council, when humanity finally encountered it, had made it clear that there was no place for young species in the galaxy's order. Young species either served the old ones, or they disappeared. But humanity had learned something important from those early years. They had learned that the galaxy's rulers were not gods. They were just beings, with flaws and fears and secrets they wanted to keep hidden. And humanity, young and weak and ignored, had been in the perfect position to watch and listen and learn. Project Looking Glass was the result of 60 years of careful observation. Human traders had carried hidden sensors into Vethkai space. Human scientists had cracked the Illumin's communication codes. Human diplomats had smiled and nodded and remembered every word spoken in their presence. Elena scrolled through the files, and she felt a cold satisfaction in her heart. She knew that the Sirene had destroyed 3 developing civilizations in the last 1,000 years, species that might have challenged their position someday. She knew that the Illumin had been secretly controlling the Kreth economy for centuries, using them as soldiers while keeping them poor and angry. She knew that the Vethkai had a biological weapon hidden in their border systems, a plague that could wipe out entire worlds, kept ready in case any species tried to free their slaves. She knew that the Council was not an alliance. It was a group of predators who had agreed not to eat each other, so they could focus on eating everyone else. And now, for the first time, someone outside the Council knew all their secrets. "Ambassador," President Chen said quietly, "are you suggesting what I think you are suggesting?" "I am suggesting that we stop playing by their rules," Elena replied. "For 60 years, we have pretended to be weak. We have let them underestimate us. We have gathered our strength in secret while they laughed at our small ships and our short lives." She looked directly into the camera, directly at the most powerful humans in existence. "It is time to show them who we really are." The room behind President Chen erupted in whispered arguments. Some voices called for caution, others called for courage. Elena waited, her heart pounding in her chest. Finally, President Chen raised his hand, and silence fell. "Ambassador Vasquez," he said, "you have our full authority. Whatever you decide in that chamber, whatever words you speak, they will be the words of all humanity. We will stand behind you, no matter what comes." Elena felt tears burning in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. There was no time for tears. There was only the mission. "Thank you, Mr. President," she said. "I will not let our people down." The connection ended, and Elena was alone again. She stood up and walked to the small window in her quarters. Outside, the station of Nexus Prime hung against the stars, a massive structure built by species who had been old when humanity was young. It was beautiful and terrible, a monument to powers that had ruled the galaxy for longer than humans could imagine. But nothing lasted forever. Not empires, not councils, not even the stars themselves. Everything changed. Everything grew. Everything evolved. And humanity, for all its youth, had one gift that the old species had lost. They still knew how to fight. Elena thought about her grandmother, who had survived the collapse, the years when humanity had nearly destroyed itself with war and pollution and hatred. Her grandmother had told her stories about those dark times, about the billions who had died, about the moment when it seemed like everything was lost. And then her grandmother had told her about the moment when humanity chose to live, when they put aside their differences and built a new world from the ashes of the old, when they reached for the stars because they refused to accept that their story was over. That was what it meant to be human. Not the ships or the weapons or the technology. The refusal to give up. The insistence on hope even when hope seemed foolish. The stubborn, impossible belief that tomorrow could be better than today. Elena picked up her grandmother's pendant and held it tight. The metal was warm against her palm, carrying 60 years of memories and 300 years of hope. "I won't give up," she whispered to the empty room. "No matter what happens, I won't give up." Then she put the pendant around her neck, straightened her uniform, and walked out to face the judgment of the galaxy. The council thought they knew what humanity was. They thought they knew what to expect. They were wrong. The 3 hours passed like minutes. Elena walked back into the great chamber with her head held high and her heart beating steady in her chest. She had made her decision. There was no going back now. The council members had returned to their platforms. The Vethkai were clicking softly among themselves, their many eyes tracking Elena's movement across the floor. The Illumin pulsed with impatient colors. The Kreth representative sat motionless on his throne, his yellow eyes burning with hatred. The Sirene coiled and uncoiled slowly, their silver scales catching the dim light. High Arbiter Tholux stood at the center of his platform, his crystal body glowing brighter than before. When Elena reached her place in the center of the chamber, he spoke. "Ambassador Vasquez, the recess has ended. The council is ready to hear humanity's response to the charges." His voice echoed through the vast room, sharp as breaking glass. "How do you answer?" Elena looked around the chamber one more time. She looked at the ancient beings who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. She looked at their power, their wealth, their certainty that they would always be in control. Then she looked at Tholux, and she spoke. "No." The word hung in the air like a physical thing. It was not loud, but it reached every corner of the chamber. It touched every ear, every sensor, every consciousness present. For a long moment, nothing happened. The silence was so complete that Elena could hear her own heartbeat. Then Tholux's crystal form flickered, colors racing through his body like he could not quite process what he had heard. "No," he repeated. "Ambassador, I do not understand." "No to what?" "No to everything," Elena said. Her voice was calm, steady, without anger or fear. "No to your charges. No to your authority. No to this council's right to judge humanity, or any other free species." The chamber exploded with noise. The Vethkai shrieked, their clicking rising to a deafening roar. The Kreth representative surged to his feet, bellowing in rage. The Illumin flashed with angry red light, pulsing so bright that Elena had to shield her eyes. Even the usually silent Sirene hissed, their coils tightening around their gravity cradles. Tholux raised his hands, and slowly, painfully, silence returned. But it was an angry silence. A dangerous silence. The kind of silence that comes before violence. "Ambassador," Tholux said, and now his voice was cold, colder than the space between stars. "I do not think you understand your position. Humanity is a young species. You have no allies. You have no power. You stand before the combined might of 12 civilizations that have ruled this galaxy since before your ancestors crawled out of the ocean." "I understand my position perfectly," Elena replied. "I am a representative of humanity. I speak for 8 billion people on Earth and another 2 billion on our colony worlds. I speak for every human who has ever lived, and every human who will ever be born." She paused, letting her words sink in. "And I am telling you, on their behalf, that we do not recognize your authority." The Vethkai delegate leaned forward, his many eyes narrowing. "You would refuse the judgment of the council? You would stand against the laws that have kept peace in this galaxy for 10,000 years? Your laws have not kept peace," Elena said. "Your laws have kept order. There is a difference. Peace means that all beings are free and safe. Order means that the strong can do what they want, and the weak must accept it." She turned to face the Vethkai directly. "How many slaves do you keep? Ambassador, how many beings live and die in chains so that your people can live in comfort?" The Vethkai delegate's clicking became sharp and furious. "Those creatures are property. They are not citizens, not persons. They exist to serve. They exist because they are alive," Elena said. And being alive gives them rights that no law can take away. Humanity will not accept any treaty that allows slavery. Humanity will not return the refugees who came to us for protection. Humanity will not pretend that your order is just. The Kreth representative finally spoke, his voice like grinding stone. The refugees you shelter are criminals. They fled from lawful punishment. You have violated our sovereignty by taking them. Your lawful punishment is death, Elena replied. They came to us because they would rather die trying to be free than live as your property. We gave them shelter because that is what humans do. We help those who need help. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. She met the Kreth's burning yellow eyes without flinching. We will not apologize for that. We will never apologize for that. Tholuk stepped forward, his crystal body casting strange shadows across the floor. Ambassador Vasquez, you speak boldly for a species that has only been among the stars for 60 years. Do you truly believe that humanity can stand against the combined power of this council? I believe that humanity has the right to exist as a free people, Elena said. I believe that right does not depend on our power, or our age, or our technology. I believe that every being in this galaxy deserves to make their own choices about their own future. She took a breath. And I believe that if you try to take that right from us, we will fight. The chamber fell silent again. This time, the silence was not shock. It was disbelief. The illumined delegate pulsed with complex patterns of light. You would fight? Against all of us? Your species would be destroyed in days. Perhaps, Elena said, perhaps you could destroy every human world. Perhaps you could kill every human being. But you would not do it easily. You would not do it without cost. And the galaxy would remember. She looked around the chamber, meeting every eye that would meet hers. The galaxy would remember that a young species, a small species, a species that had everything to lose, chose to fight rather than kneel. And others would take courage from that. Others would start to ask why they should accept your order. Others would start to say no. The Syrian elder uncoiled slowly from his gravity cradle. He had not spoken yet, not once during the entire proceeding. Now his voice filled the chamber, ancient and cold, like wind through empty ruins. You would die for a word? He asked. You would sacrifice your entire species for the right to say no? Elena touched her grandmother's pendant. She thought about the collapse, about the dark years, about all the times when humanity had faced extinction and chosen to keep fighting. Yes, she said, because that word is everything. That word is freedom. That word is dignity. That word is the difference between a person and a slave. She lifted her chin. Humanity will not be slaves. Not today. Not ever. And if the price of that freedom is our destruction, then we will pay it. And we will pay it standing on our feet, not kneeling at your thrones. The silence stretched on and on. Elena could feel the weight of it pressing down on her, the weight of 12 civilizations trying to understand what they had just heard. Then Tholuk spoke, and his voice was very quiet. You are either very brave or very foolish, Ambassador. Elena smiled, and there was no humor in it. Humans have always been both, she said. That is what makes us dangerous. The Council had expected many things from humanity. They had expected fear, submission, negotiation, perhaps desperate defiance. They had not expected a single word that changed everything. They had not expected no. The chaos that followed Elena's words was like nothing the council chamber had seen in centuries. The Vethkai delegate was screaming for immediate military action, his clicking so loud and fast that the translators could barely keep up. The Kreth representative had drawn a ceremonial blade and was pointing it at Elena, bellowing threats in his grinding voice. The Illumin pulsed with furious red light, their gaseous bodies expanding with rage. But Elena stood calm in the center of it all. She waited, her hands clasped behind her back, her face showing nothing. She had known this would happen. She had prepared for it. When the noise finally began to die down, she raised her hand. Before you decide to destroy us, she said, her voice cutting through the remaining chaos, there is something you should know. The chamber fell silent. Even the Vethkai stopped clicking. There was something in Elena's voice, something that made them all pay attention. Elena pulled a small device from her pocket. It was a data transmitter, standard human technology. She held it up so everyone could see. I am going to send you all a file, she said. I suggest you read it before you make any decisions about humanity's future. She pressed a button, and the file transmitted to every screen and terminal in the chamber. For a moment, nothing happened. The council members looked at their screens, confused by the long lists of numbers and words and images. Then, slowly, understanding began to spread. The Vethkai delegate made a sound that Elena had never heard before. It was high and thin, almost like a scream. His many eyes went wide, and his claws dug into the surface of his platform. The illumined delegate flickered through colors so fast that they became almost white. Then they went dark, darker than Elena had ever seen an illumin go. The Kreth representative stared at his screen for a long moment. Then he looked at the illumin, and the hatred in his eyes was different now. It was no longer directed at Elena. The Serene elder said nothing, but his silver coils tightened around his gravity cradle so hard that the metal creaked. Tholux's crystal body had stopped glowing entirely. He stood frozen on his platform, staring at the information on his screen like he could not believe what he was seeing. "How?" he whispered. "How do you have this?" Elena smiled. It was not a nice smile. 60 years, she said. 60 years we have been among you. 60 years you have ignored us, dismissed us, treated us like children who were not worth your attention. She took a step forward. You should have paid more attention. She gestured at the screens around the chamber. I know about the Serene operations on Velcor 3, 7, and 9. 3 developing civilizations, destroyed before they could reach the stars. You told the galaxy they died from natural causes. They did not. You killed them because you were afraid of competition. The Serene elder's hiss was long and cold, but he did not deny it. I know about the Illumin's economic manipulation of the Kreth Dominion. Elena turned to face the glowing beings. For 300 years, you have controlled their banking systems. You keep them poor, you keep them angry, and you point them at anyone who threatens your interests. The Kreth think they are warriors. They are your weapons. The Kreth representative turned to stare at the Illumin, his hand still gripping his blade. The hatred in his eyes had found a new target. I know about the biological weapon the Vethkai have hidden in the disputed reach. Elena looked at the insectoid delegate. A plague designed to kill any species with a carbon-based biology. You keep it ready in case your slaves ever rise up. One command, and you could murder billions. The other council members looked at the Vethkai with new expressions. Fear, suspicion, the beginning of old alliances breaking apart. I know, Elena continued, that this council is not an alliance of equals. It is a cage you have built for each other. You stay in it because you are afraid of what would happen if you left. You are afraid that the others would destroy you if you showed weakness. She spread her hands. And you are right to be afraid, because none of you can be trusted. None of you have ever been able to be trusted. Tholux finally found his voice. This is a bluff. You cannot have all of this information. It is impossible. Is it? Elena asked. Your species lives for thousands of years. Ours lives for less than 100. You think that makes us weak. You think that makes us slow and foolish and not worth watching. She shook her head. You are wrong. Our short lives make us desperate. They make us hungry. They make us watch and learn and remember, because we do not have time to waste. She walked forward until she was standing directly beneath Tholux's platform. Every human trader who entered your space carried hidden sensors. Every human diplomat memorized every word spoken in their presence. Every human scientist worked to break your codes and crack your secrets. Her voice was hard now, hard as stone. We knew we were young. We knew we were weak. So we did the only thing we could do. We watched. We waited. We learned. She turned to address the entire council. Now I am going to tell you what is going to happen. Humanity is going to walk out of this chamber today as a free and sovereign species. You are not going to stop us. You are not going to punish us. You are going to let us go. The Vethkai delegate found his voice. Why would we do that? You have threatened us, insulted us, revealed information that could what? Elena interrupted. Start a war between you? Destroy the careful balance you have maintained for 10,000 years? She smiled again, and this time there was something almost like pity in it. You will not attack humanity because you cannot afford to. The moment you turn your attention to us, the others will move against you. The moment you show weakness, your enemies will strike. She pointed at the Kreth representative. The Dominion has wanted revenge against the Illumin for centuries. They just did not know who to blame for their poverty. She pointed at the Sirene. The elder species have grown comfortable. They have forgotten how to fight. If the truth about their crimes spread, a dozen younger species would rise against them. She pointed at the Vethkai. Your slaves are already restless. If they knew about the plague weapon, if they knew you could kill them all with a single command, they would have nothing left to lose. And beings with nothing to lose are very, very dangerous. Elena returned to the center of the chamber and stood tall. Humanity is not your enemy. We do not want to destroy you or conquer you or rule over you. We only want to be free. We only want to live in peace, on our own terms, making our own choices. She paused. But if you force us to fight, we will not fight alone. We will share everything we know with everyone who has suffered under your rule. We will light fires across the galaxy. We will burn your order to the ground. The silence that followed was absolute. Not a sound, not a movement, not even the clicking of the Vethkai. Then, slowly, the Sirene elder uncoiled from his gravity cradle. He floated down from his platform until he was level with Elena, his ancient eyes studying her face. You speak of burning our order, he said, his voice quiet and cold. Do you understand what that would mean? Billions would die. Civilizations would fall. The galaxy would descend into chaos. Yes, Elena said. I understand, and I hope it never comes to that. But I also understand that sometimes things have to burn before they can grow. Sometimes the old has to die so the new can be born. She met his ancient gaze without flinching. Humanity has burned before. We know how to survive the flames, do you? The Sirene elder stared at her for a long, long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh. You are a fascinating species, he said. Terrifying, but fascinating. He turned and floated back to his platform without another word. Elena stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. And she did not look away. She had played her hand. Now it was time to see if the galaxy would fold. The vote took 6 hours. 6 hours of argument and accusation, of old alliances breaking apart and new suspicions being born. The council members had retreated to their private chambers, each one reading through the files Elena had given them, each one discovering secrets they had never known about their supposed allies. Elena waited in a small room off the main chamber. She had not been allowed to leave the station, but she had not been arrested either. That was a good sign. She hoped it was a good sign. Her communication device buzzed. It was a message from Earth, from President Chen. We are watching, the message said. Whatever happens, we are proud of you. Elena read the words 3 times. Then she put the device away and went back to waiting. Finally, the doors opened, and a Sirene attendant gestured for her to return to the main chamber. The council members had returned to their platforms, but something was different now. The Vethkai and the Illumin were no longer sitting near each other. The Kreeth representative had moved his throne away from the other members, creating a gap of empty space around himself. The careful arrangement of the chamber, the physical representation of 10,000 years of alliance, had been broken. Elena walked to her place in the center and waited. High Arbiter Tholux rose from his platform. His crystal body was glowing again, but dimly, like a fire that had nearly gone out. The council has voted on the matter of humanity, he announced. His voice was tired, older than it had been before. The vote was not unanimous. Elena felt her heart skip. Not unanimous could mean anything. The charges against humanity are hereby dropped, Tholux continued. Humanity will be recognized as a sovereign species with full rights under galactic law. The colonies in the disputed reach will be acknowledged as human territory. The refugees under human protection will not be subject to extradition. A wave of relief washed over Elena, but she did not let it show on her face. Not yet. There was still more to come. However, Tholux said, and his voice grew harder, the council has also voted to end its formal alliance with humanity. Trade agreements will be suspended. Diplomatic relations will be limited. Humanity will be watched. Elena nodded slowly. That is acceptable. It is not a victory, Tholux said. You have not made friends here today, Ambassador. You have made the entire galaxy aware that humanity cannot be trusted. We never asked to be trusted, Elena replied. We only asked to be free. The Kreeth representative stood from his throne. He had not spoken during the vote, and he did not speak now. But he looked at Elena for a long moment. And then, he did something unexpected. He nodded. Just once, a small movement of his massive head. Then he turned and walked out of the chamber, his guards following behind him. Elena watched him go. She thought about the files she had revealed, about the truth of Illumin manipulation that the Kreth had never known. She wondered what would happen in the Dominion now. She wondered if she had just started a war, or prevented one. The other council members began to leave, one by one. The Vethkai departed in furious silence, their clicking filling the chamber like a storm of bones. The Illumin faded away, their colors dim and troubled. The other species, the ones who had not spoken during the trial, slipped away into the shadows without a word. Finally, only Elena and the Syrian elder remained. The ancient being floated down from his platform one last time. He was so old, Elena realized. Older than human civilization. Older than almost anything in the galaxy. "You have changed things today," he said. "Things that were stable for 10,000 years will now begin to shift. New powers will rise. Old powers will fall. The galaxy you leave behind will not be the same as the one you entered." "Is that a warning?" Elena asked. "It is an observation." The Syrian elder coiled slowly in the air before her. "My species has seen many young races emerge and grow and sometimes challenge the old order. Most of them fail. They burn too bright, too fast, and then they are gone. And the ones who succeed? The ones who succeed change everything." The elder's ancient eyes studied her face. "They remake the galaxy in their own image. For better or worse, they leave their mark on the universe itself." Elena thought about that for a moment. "We do not want to rule the galaxy," she said finally. "We just want to live in it. Free, equal, making our own choices. Every young species says that," the elder replied. "At first, but power changes things. Success changes things. When you are strong enough to rule, will you still choose not to?" It was a good question. Elena did not have an answer for it. "I do not know," she admitted. "I cannot speak for humans who have not been born yet. I can only speak for the ones who are alive today. And today, we choose freedom. For ourselves and for everyone else." The Syrian elder made that strange laughing sound again. "Then I wish you luck, Ambassador. You will need it." He turned and floated away, leaving Elena alone in the great chamber. She stood there for a moment, looking up at the empty platforms, the dark stone walls, the shadows where the most powerful beings in the galaxy had sat in judgment over her species. Then she smiled. It was not a triumphant smile. There was too much work ahead for triumph, too many dangers still waiting. The Vethkai would want revenge. The Illumin would scheme and manipulate. The Kreth might become allies or enemies, depending on what they chose to do with the truth she had given them. But humanity was still free. Humanity was still sovereign. Humanity had stood before the combined might of the galaxy and said one word that changed everything. "No." Elena walked out of the chamber and through the corridors of Nexus Prime. The station felt different now, quieter, like a storm had passed and left everyone uncertain about what would come next. Her crew was waiting for her at the airlock of the Defiant Hope. They looked at her with wide eyes, desperate for news. "We won," she said simply. "We are going home." The cheer that went up was so loud that Elena was sure every being on the station could hear it, but she did not care. Let them hear. Let them know that humanity was still standing. She boarded her ship and walked to the observation deck. Through the windows, she could see the stars, millions of them, billions of them, stretching out into infinity. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting. Her home, her people, her future. They had survived. Against all odds, against all expectations. They had survived. But survival was only the beginning. Now came the hard part. Now came the building, the growing, the becoming whatever humanity was meant to become. Elena touched her grandmother's pendant one last time. "We did it," she whispered. "We said no." And they listened. The ship's engines came to life, and the Defiant Hope began its long journey back to Earth. Behind them, the Galactic Council sat in the ruins of their broken alliance, trying to understand what had happened. A young species had walked into their chamber with nothing but words and courage, and they had walked out with their freedom, their dignity, and a promise that the galaxy would never forget. The promise was simple. Humanity would not kneel. Not today. Not ever. And in a universe full of ancient powers and terrible forces, that simple promise